Our next speaker is Brian Kukan, who comes to us virtually from Los Angeles, California, with the topic Bridging the Gap Between Spiritual and Physical Health with Reiki. Brian is a former high school math teacher who began studying Reiki in 2007 and transitioned from the classroom to pursue it full-time 5 years later. He holds multiple Reiki Master Teacher certifications from both local and international teachers. Combining his math education background with his spiritual practice, Brian offers a unique approach that makes Reiki accessible even to skeptics. Currently, he teaches Jikiden Reiki classes and provides sessions to clients in the LA area and virtually worldwide. To connect with Brian, you can find him at lareikigai.com. Please join me in welcoming Brian Kukan.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. First, I want to thank Soul Heart Collaboration and Jamie Bishop for having me here. And thank you to all the speakers for this wonderful event. It's been amazing thus far, and I hope to continue it with this little talk about bridging the gap between spiritual and physical health. Specifically for me with Reiki, but this could apply to any kind of spiritual healing practice. Along those lines, whatever that modality might be. So just to get it all out there, this is what we're going through. So this is our itinerary for our flight today, and this is that teaching background that I have. So after the introduction and objective, we're going to start grounding this conversation with spiritual versus physical in that conversation, going through some of the other topics to the end. Times are going to be, around that approximation, but I had to plan it out so that you know the journey, because I like to know things ahead of time. So if anyone's on that same wavelength, then there you go. You know what you're in for. A little bit more about me. Like it was said, I was a teacher, trained in education, and then spent 13 years in the public school classroom. So you can see that I started from that grounded basis of math and reasoning and such. But then along the way, I started practicing Reiki and meditation and such, and it started opening my mind to different things that I couldn't necessarily explain with my math and logic approach to life. And you'll see that connection here today, hopefully. Studied with many different lineages of Reiki and settled with Jikiden Reiki more specifically. So you can see I have that grounded approach with math, but also the spiritual approach with Reiki and other practices there. But I'm also a musician, so I play music. So I just want to appeal to everybody and let everybody have a good time. So that is my purpose here. And at the bottom, you can see I'm also a husband and a father, and there's my two favorite people in the world on one of our vacations that we had this past summer. So my objective with this talk, I have the tree there because I like to imagine myself as a giant redwood that is firmly rooted in the earth, but reaches so high up to live and commune with the clouds and the sky up above. So I both want to be grounded in the earth and the physical world, but I also want to commune with the clouds. I don't want to have my head in the clouds without remaining connected to the earth. So I think the tree really works for a visual for myself there. And so I want to be that tree that anyone from the grounded aspect could use to climb up to reach the clouds and an avenue, a vehicle for anything in the clouds to then reach and connect down to the earth. So let's get it started. We're going to ground this conversation into these words that we're looking at. So first, we're going to look at physical and look at spiritual. So what do these words mean? So if you look up physical in the Oxford Dictionary, it is of or relating to the body. So great. Physical, connected with the body. But I also like this definition from Merriam-Webster, as is of or relating to natural science, having material existence. So this approach, this science approach, and this material existence, it can be seen, it can be touched, it can be quantified and measured in a sense. So if we look at then spiritual, Oxford Dictionary definition is relating to or concerned with the human spirit or soul, especially considered from a religious or moral standpoint. And so here sometimes when we separate the conversation into two factions, there is the science and then there is the religious connecting with that spiritual. So in an effort to help bridge that gap, especially in conversations in two aspects, physical and spiritual, we have to look at spirit and start to maybe just break it away from just religious context. So if we look further into the conversation of spirit, it is the immaterial or sentient element of a person. So now we have some words that we can grasp onto. Physical, we can look at material. Spiritual is immaterial. Okay? To summarize it, to sum it up or simplify it, you can think of when we describe something physical as describing a thing. It's something we can see, touch, measure, quantify. But something spiritual is no thing, but it's not nothing. We can't deny there is something. It's just not physical. It's not something we can touch and measure scientifically in a sense. And we can look at other uses of the word spirit to help describe our use of this word to things that people, everybody can connect with. For example, school spirit. It's a very secular use of the word spirit there. But you can walk onto a campus or go to a sporting event and feel and connect with a school spirit there. Yes, you can see the team colors or the shirts or towels or hats or anything like that. But there's a sense, if there is a strong school spirit, it is something intangible, but we can connect with it and we can relate to it. Also, uses of the phrase. You feel if someone is in good spirits or if they're in high spirits. You could also experience someone if they are in low spirits. And this is just an everyday kind of language using the word spirit. If someone is spirited, there is an energy about them. There is a quantity or a quality about them using this description. So coming from my background with Reiki, if you're trying to talk, and I introduce a lot of people to Reiki, a lot of newcomers into Reiki, and have over the years, I work a lot with the cancer community. So some people come to the different nonprofits that I work with who receive Reiki sessions, and they're like, I don't know what it is, but I'm here to try it out. But sometimes if you're trying to talk to somebody and you are just living in the clouds and you're trying to communicate to somebody that's very on earth and grounded, you might sound like you're from outer space, like you are Obi-Wan here talking to Luke describing this Reiki. And above me, you'll see these are the kanji that is the ancient Japanese language for Reiki. There's a lot of meaning in these kanji, but we are going to simplify it for the purpose of today's discussion. The top kanji in the time of the beginning of the Usui Reiki practice in the early 1920s, it was often translated or meant as spirit or soul. If today you drew that kanji in Google Translate or looked it up, it might translate it as ghost or occult, because these things have meaning and language evolves over time. But if we look back at when this word was used in terms of a Reiki practice, it was more referred to as a spirit or soul quality. Ki, the bottom kanji, just easily translates as energy. So if you're looking at Reiki, you're looking at this spirit energy, this immaterial energy. And that's hard to explain to someone that is very grounded. So we're trying to bridge this gap here. We're trying to connect it. So if you're looking at someone from a very grounded approach, they might be very science-based and looking at something like this in the concept of energy. This is physics, definitions of energy. They have these different aspects to it. You have this potential energy, kinetic energy, all these different forms. And our body uses energy. So we try to relate to someone in doing energy work as this spirit energy, this Reiki or whatever practice you use, as giving the body some extra energy for it to do its normal healing work, where we do get energy. We get energy from all the food, the drinks, the air we breathe, and our body converts and uses that energy to do what it normally does. So there's chemical processes to break the food down, and it is used to change into these different energies, using the electrical energy of our nervous system, the different thermal energy to keep our body warm. If you have food sensitivities, you might experience some wind energy and some sound energy as well. But it's all this energy, real energy that the body is using to just do its daily functions. But where does Ray fit in here? So we have to find a way to connect this spirit energy with the grounded physical sciences experience of energy. So if you do some searching, and I highly suggest that if you are a practitioner, go check out PubMed. This is the National Library of Medicine that has and hosts all of these scholarly articles and research studies about anything you can. So this is just a search on Reiki in there. And you can see if I search Reiki in the U.S. National Library of Medicine, there is almost 70,000 results. These are articles, these are research studies, these are compilations of different studies that you can find. And I've read through some of them. I do not have the time or the desire to read through all 70,000 of these. But I even looked up, you can search healing touch, therapeutic touch, Qigong, biofield energies, and there are thousands of articles and research that is being done on these. They're not necessarily highly publicized or not, but you look them up to see what is being done to kind of be able to communicate in a scientific way, to measure results using these practices. In those studies, we have to quantify, we have to measure. And the one aspect that I think is easy for all of us to grasp onto, and that many of us know, is through the autonomic nervous system. The two aspects of the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, you might not know this vocabulary, but you do know the concepts of them, especially the sympathetic nervous system. It's talked about so often. And we want to engage in some of the vocabulary and language of people on the grounded side if we're in the spiritual community, so that we can expand the collaboration and understanding between everybody, so that we can work together. So this sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight response. It is the stress response of the body, of the system. This aspect is focused on immediate survival. It just wants to generate all this energy so that you can either fight for your life or you can flee for your life. That is all that it is focused on in that moment. Increase in the heart rate, increase in the blood pressure. But it also does two things that aren't working for us very well. It's suppressing the immune system and the digestive system. So if our digestion is suppressed, that means we're unable to get the energy from the food so that we can have energy for our health. And if the immune system is suppressed, well, hello. That's why oftentimes if you are overstressed or living in a stressful state for too long, you are more susceptible to get sick. just because the immune system is not working at peak performance. On the opposite end, we have the parasympathetic nervous system. This is your rest and digest system, as opposed to fight or flight. So you can already see just in its nickname what it's focused on. This is the relaxation response. These studies can measure if muscles are relaxing. And so that is related to these practices. We can show that. This system is focused on long-term health. And this is the system that we want to be able to activate, that we also want to live in longer, because that is going to promote health in our physical body. The immune system and digestive system are activated in this landscape. So we want to, one, recognize when we are in a stress state, and two, be able to recognize and conjure up a state of relaxation for our own health. These spiritual healing practices, Reiki for me, or whatever practice it is you use, helps us activate that parasympathetic nervous system so that the body can heal faster. Now, do miracles happen? Yes. Am I going to promise that Reiki is going to cure someone of something? No, I'm not delusional. Do miracles happen? Of course. I can't promise miracles, but I can promise that they will get relaxed. And in so doing, that relaxation is helping the body heal faster. Now, outside of Reiki and spiritual practices on the PubMed and the National Library of Medicine, this is just a completely different study, the impact of psychological stress on wound healings, methods, and mechanisms. So this was showing how stress can affect how long it takes to heal from a wound. And you can see that there are 67 references in this one compilation study. So these are all different articles and research studies that have been done. And there is a lot of studies that show that if someone is stressed, and these studies, I mean, they would like poke a hole in somebody, just create a small little injury. And then compare those that are stressed, those that are relaxed, and they can literally see that it takes longer to heal if your body is in a state of stress. And so this is one way that we are connecting what we are doing to physical health. I can't guarantee physical health, but I can show that what I do will promote healing in the body. And there's now a lot of this evidence to then support it. So in summary here, if we're talking about physical health, this is the material health. This is the health of the body and its parts, that physical aspect. But if you're talking about someone's spiritual health, you're connecting it with their mental and emotional well-being. And these are connected. You can't have one without the other. They are inextricably linked. And so we want to use that approach to support everyone's health, whether you are a doctor or a nurse or a medical practitioner, or if you are a healing practitioner in whatever modality it is. We want to be able to work together to collaborate for everyone's health and wellness. And so what is the bridge to those gaps from the two different worlds? It's knowledge. It's knowledge and a desire to connect, to make healing from both aspects a combined effort for everyone's happiness and health. And that sums it all up. If you do have any questions, please, of course, chime in and let me know. Pearl will let me know, Scott as well in the room. If you have any questions about Reiki or anything that I've talked about today, please feel free to reach out at any time. I always love talking about this stuff. And thank you again for your time and your kind attention.
Brian. I don't know if you heard it, but the whole room was applauding. So you did well, my friend. And after you finish sharing your screen, you can read the chat comments. A lot of love going there for you. Um, but I'm really shocked. I mean, only 60,000 entries. I mean, I thought for sure there might have been at least one or two more. Pearl, do we have some questions for Brian?
I heard that Mark has a question in the room, so happy to start there.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to head over to Mark because she's a mind reader. Pearl knows all.
Well,
Well,
I've got my
thanks.
skills.
Thanks. That was great. I've never heard a more logical description of this topic, and it helped me immensely to try to figure out what it is. However, my question is, for those of us who are more, what's the term you use? Grounded?
Yes.
That I love it. By the way, that's a perfect term. For those of us that are more grounded, how bad? I mean, I guess what the last thing you said was it's kind of it comes from both directions. If the skepticism, I guess that's a nasty word, but let me say, if does skepticism inhibit the benefit from the practitioner to the, are we talking about patients or clients?
I would use the term clients
Client. Okay.
as not
Okay,
being
so-
a medical professional.
Gotcha. So is that inhibitive of the process?
Possibly, but I think that lands on the realm of the practitioner to do a great job getting them open to the process. So being able to communicate to someone like this in a more grounded approach creates the atmosphere for someone that's still skeptical. Trust me, I'm still skeptical of all of this stuff, and yet I still practice because of the experience. So if we can get someone to be open to the experience, even with some skepticism still there, and you can explain, as long as you're getting relaxed, you will get benefit, and that they can comprehend that, that's enough. Because it is through the experience that someone can say or get to know, like, oh, how this could be beneficial to them. I hope that makes sense.
He's nodding. I'm sorry, we don't have a camera on the audience for you,
Okay,
but
no
he's
worries.
nodding.
Okay.
And my
We do have a
brand new
couple of questions. Sorry,
Yes,
Scott,
Pearl, go
just
ahead.
wanted to
I
let
was
you
just
know.
going to say Claire has a question.
Okay.
Yes. I will go ahead and read it really quick for Claire, and then she wants to expand. But she was just wondering the differences between the different types of Reiki in your experience. What are the
Okay.
differences?
So there's I would say two kind of branches. There's the traditional Japanese Reiki, and then there's the Western approach. So things that came after Hawaii Takata I'm going to nerd out a little bit on Reiki here. So once Reiki left Japan and went through Hawaii Takata, people after that then started to individualize it a little bit more and add a lot more to it, adding crystals, adding chakras, all of these other aspects that are not necessarily in the original teachings. So that's why me being the math, logical, research based, and I felt as close as I could to the original teachings. And that's what I like to teach. It's a very, very simple practice at its base. But just we as humans, we've just added a lot to it and made it a little bit more complicated. So with my intro was in Western Reiki is where I started. And it was great because it opened me up to a lot of different experiences. And then I just followed what guided me in terms of research and knowledge and going back to the source. And that's where I landed on Jikiden Reiki, and Jikiden translates to direct teachings. So that was founded by people that did not leave Japan and started teaching the teachings. It was from one of Hayashi Sensei's students. Her and her son founded the organization.
Claire? You are on mute still. So I just want to make sure that that helped.
Yes, that's great. Thank you. I was just confused because Usui wasn't mentioned. That's
yeah.
that's why I thought it was maybe not.
Yeah, no, it's all based in Usui Reiki.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you. Great presentation.
Thank you, Claire.
And then I do have one more question, and it looks like we have time just to sneak that in. You talked a little bit about this, Brian, how you got into Reiki, but if you could expound a little bit more of what brought you to it and how did you find Reiki?
Okay, so I was going through a tough time in my life, and I started reaching out to things that I've always wanted to do, which started out doing meditation and finding some meditation classes. And in having conversations around meditation, then Reiki just came up in one of those. And it was while I was visiting my family back in small town Pennsylvania at a bar one night, and someone brought up the conversation of Reiki, and it sounded interesting, and I needed to find out more about it. So I bought a book, Reiki for Beginners, because that's where I start. And then immediately I jumped into taking a class because as an educator, it's like, oh, if you want to learn something, do something. The book said, well, you have to take a class. So I never experienced Reiki before taking a class to get an attunement and become a Reiki practitioner. And even in that experience, it was like, wait, something's happening. I'm experiencing it. I don't know how to explain it. And that was the math side of it. But I couldn't deny the experience because I was actually having it. And then in the beginning of practicing it, I kept having more of those experiences that I couldn't deny. Where if someone else told me those experiences, I'd probably write it off and I'd have a million reasons of why it would happen outside of those spiritual explanations. But I was the one who was having them, and I was having trouble explaining them with a science, rational, mathematical approach to life. But I couldn't deny it. So I just kept going, and I wanted to learn more and more and more. And it changed my life. Like I quit teaching because of it. It was crazy.
Well, I have to tell you,
thank you.
Brian. Sorry, Pearl. Yes, go ahead. Say it.
Well, let's just say thank you very much. And I was gonna give it back to you so we can set up for our next speaker.
Yes, but before we do, I have to say, Brian, you are so good at explaining. The two other questions in the room were already answered because when I walked over, they said, no, we already answered it. So you did good. And for my Japanese friends, domo arigato.
Thank you very much, Scott, Pearl, and everybody.
Okay. I'm sorry. So Brian, I appreciate your inspiration because I can now see that even grounded people can get inspired in a bar over a good Kentucky bourbon.
My pleasure. Thank you.